This day in sports history.
Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
And welcome back to another edition of This Dish, an independently produced podcast, but a member of the Sports History Network family. You can find more sports history podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's October 27th, and on this day in 2004, the Boston Red Sox finally broke the curse. Depending on how you view things, there were some omens on this day for Red Sox fans. This was Game 4 of the World Series matchup with the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, granted, Boston held a 3-0 lead and just needed one more win to secure their first World Series title since 1918. But there was a lunar eclipse in the sky on this night, and to the ancients, a lunar eclipse is a portent of doom for rulers. Well, after the Red Sox had flipped an 0-3 series deficit against the New York Yankees in the ALCS to get to the World Series, could this be a sign that they were about to go down? And surely somebody pointed to the calendar that day and remembered that this was the 18th anniversary of the Red Sox losing in Game 7 of their World Series against the New York Mets, a series they should have won if not for the pitching of Calvin Schiraldi and Bob Stanley and the bad knees, ankles, and Achilles of Bill Buckner. And of course, there was the curse of the Bambino. As Dan Shaughnessy wrote in his book by the same name, the selling of Ruth was the sin that could not be atoned for. But the Boston Red Sox themselves did not look at the tea leaves or seek the advice of a local medium or attempt to exorcise the curse by any supernatural means. They just got to work. Johnny Damon led off the game with a solo shot to give Boston a lead that they would never relinquish. In the third, after a Manny Ramirez single and a David Ortiz double, Trot Nixon hit another double to score 2 more runs, and that was all the Red Sox needed to overcome 86 years of heartache and misery. The Red Sox ended up winning 8 straight games in the postseason to turn what looked like another story to be added to the curse into an unbelievable turnaround. Boston never trailed the entire World Series, and after the game, Manny Ramirez said, "I don't believe in curses. I believe you make your own destination." Well, he meant destiny, but we understand just the same. And with the Patriots winning the Super Bowl back in February, Boston became the first city since Pittsburgh in 1979 to own both the Lombardi Trophy and the MLB's Commissioner's Trophy. Let's switch it up and talk some college football. And once again, we're talking about the crazy 2007 season. If you're a fan of the show, then you know I've been talking about Tony Barnhart's book, Southern Fried Football, and his contention that 2007 was the wildest and the best college football season on record. Well, today I'm talking about 2 different SEC games from 2007. Let's start in Jacksonville for the Georgia-Florida game, aka the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Dawgs and Gators is a huge rivalry game every year, but at this point, Florida's dominance of Georgia had taken a little bit of the luster off this game. The Gators had won 15 of the previous 17 games in the series, and Georgia coach Mark Richt was tired of it, and he had a surprise up his sleeve in this one. After forcing a turnover on Florida's opening drive, Georgia drove down the field to set up this scoring play. Here's Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson with a call for CBS that day.
High formation again, power to the left side on 3rd and goal. Marino up over the top. Did he break the plane? Yes. Georgia, touchdown. And here comes the entire team. Watch this for excessive celebration. We may have 15 hankies in the air on this one. I can't believe this.
This was planned. This was absolutely planned. Mark Richt decided that he is going to try to fire his team up. He's tired of Florida having the psychological advantage. He's willing to give up the penalty.
And as Danielson pointed out, it was definitely a planned move by Richt to set the tone in what he knew would be a hard-fought contest. Georgia was penalized twice for the celebration for a total of 30 yards, but it was worth it. Noshan Marino would roll up 223 yards on the ground, and he scored 3 touchdowns as the Dawgs beat Florida 42-30. On that same day in Knoxville, Tennessee, it was a Charles Dickens novel, as in a tale of two halves in an SEC battle between Tennessee and South Carolina. Before diving into the game, though, you should know how crazy things were coming into this one. First, the Gamecocks had started the season under Steve Spurrier 6-1, with that lone loss to number 2 LSU, the eventual national champions. The week prior to this game, the then number 6 Gamecocks had lost at home to an unranked Vanderbilt team on homecoming. Ouch. Now, the Volunteer season had been a bit of a roller coaster ride, starting the season 1-2 with losses to number 12 Cal and number 3 Florida. Then they won 3 straight and got to number 20 in the AP poll before losing again the week prior to an unranked Alabama team. It was a logjam at the top of the SEC East, with Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Kentucky all tied for the lead coming into this one. Tennessee had fallen out of the top 25 after the Alabama loss, but they built a 21-0 advantage over the Gamecocks after forcing a couple of turnovers and turning those into touchdowns. But the Vols could not find the end zone after that. South Carolina finally got their offense going in the second half, scoring touchdowns on 3 of their first 4 possessions to tie the game up. After 2 more turnovers that squelched drives, the Gamecocks got the go-ahead 49-yard field goal from Ryan Suckup to give them their first lead of the day. The Volunteers were able to put the jumper cables on their offense long enough to set up the tying field goal with 5 seconds left in regulation and send it into overtime. The Vols got the ball first in OT, but they still couldn't find the end zone and settled for another field goal. But as it turned out, that's all they needed. Suckup missed a 41-yarder to give Tennessee a wild, if a bit undeserved, 27-24 win. The win was the first of 5 straight for the Vols, who ended up winning the SEC East. For South Carolina, it was part of a 5-game losing skid that wrecked their season. And on this day in 2002, Dallas Cowboy running back Emmitt Smith turned an 11-yard run into history. The Cowboys were at home playing the Seattle Seahawks. The 2002 season is mostly forgettable for the Cowboys and Cowboy fans, winning only 5 games and finishing last in the NFC East that year. In fact, the only memorable thing that happened that season was this moment. Smith's 11-yard run gave him enough career rushing yards to pass his childhood idol Walter Payton as the all-time rushing leader in NFL history. Payton's record of 16,726 yards had been the standard for 18 seasons. When Smith surpassed it on this day, it was his 13th season in the league. Payton had also amassed his yards in 13 seasons. The game was halted a few minutes to recognize the moment. Smith celebrated with his teammates, members of his family, as well as members of Payton's family. Now, Walter had died 3 years prior from a rare liver disease. After the on-field celebration, the Cowboys marched down the field, and Smith capped the drive with his 125th career touchdown. This would be his last season in Dallas before moving on to Arizona for 2 years to close out his career. Smith's 15-year total of 18,355 yards is likely to never be broken, with the average length of an NFL running back at just over 2.5 years, and the fact that there is not an active player in the league that is in the top 25 of all-time leading rushers at this point. It seems unlikely, and if it is broken, it will be a long time before we see it. Now, the closest active player is Baltimore's Derrick Henry in his 9th NFL season. Going into today's game against the Cleveland Browns, Henry has 10,206 career yards, 8,149 behind Smith. Now, let's say the 30-year-old Henry played another 8 years. He would have to average 1,020 yards over that time to catch Emmitt. Time now for today's non-sports fun fact. President Andrew Jackson had a pet parrot that learned several curse words by listening to his owner. Well, after Jackson died, the parrot attended his funeral, but had to be removed after it went on an expletive-laden outburst. That's all I've got for you today. Check back in tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.